Thanksgiving at my daughter's house always had a rhythm to it. The clatter of dishes came first, then the smell of roasted turkey drifting through the hallway. People moved in small circles between the kitchen and dining room, carrying bowls that were always slightly too hot to hold. Someone would laugh too loudly. Someone else would open a window because the oven made the house warm. I had attended enough of these dinners to know where I fit now. Once, when I walked into a room, people asked questions. They leaned in. They wanted advice. 30 years of running a manufacturing company had that effect. But retirement changes the temperature around you. It doesn't happen all at once. It's gradual. One holiday, people still ask what you're working on. The next year, they assume you're not working at all. That evening, the table filled with the usual talk: housing prices, interest rates, someone's promotion, someone else's startup idea, work, in other words. The currency of the room. I mostly listened. My son-in-law Daniel liked to talk the most. He worked for a mid-sized logistics company and carried himself with the confidence of someone whose career was moving upward at exactly the pace he expected. He was bright, energetic, and, like many people in their 30s, certain that effort explained everything. At first his remarks were harmless. "You're lucky," he said to me once the plates were filled. "Retirement must be nice." I smiled. It has its moments. A few people chuckled politely. The conversation drifted somewhere else for a while, but it circled back. It always does. Daniel leaned back in his chair, swirling the last of the wine in his glass like he'd seen executives do in movies. "So," he said, glancing around the table before looking directly at me, "when are you going to get a real job again?" He said it with a grin that suggested it was a joke. The table reacted in small ways. My brother-in-law gave a short laugh. Someone nodded as if the question made sense. My daughter stared down at her plate, not quite meeting my eyes. It wasn't cruelty exactly, more like a quiet agreement that my useful years were behind me. For a moment, I thought about explaining things the easy way. I could have said that retirement didn't mean idleness, that some of us shift careers quietly instead of announcing them. Instead, I watched Daniel. The confidence in his face wasn't arrogance so much as certainty built on incomplete information. I recognized that kind of certainty. I'd seen it in boardrooms for decades. So I smiled. "Right after I fire you from yours." The words came out lightly, almost conversationally. For half a second, someone at the table began to laugh. Then Daniel's fork slipped from his fingers and landed against his plate with a soft metallic sound. He didn't laugh. No one did. The room paused in that strange way rooms sometimes do. When people are deciding whether something is funny or serious. Daniel blinked once. "Sorry, what?" I took a sip of water before answering. "Your company was acquired last quarter," I said calmly. "Quiet deal? Private investment group." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Yeah, I know. We heard about that." I nodded. "I'm one of the investors. After the acquisition, they asked me to sit on the board." Across the table, someone shifted in their chair. Daniel stared at me, waiting for the punchline that never came. "We have a board meeting Monday," I continued. "Operational restructuring is on the agenda. Logistics divisions are being reviewed." I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. Understanding arrived slowly around the table. My brother-in-law stopped smiling. My daughter finally looked up, confusion moving across her face. Daniel understood first. His shoulders lowered slightly. The easy posture he'd been carrying all evening disappeared, replaced by something tighter. "You're serious," he said quietly. I shrugged a little. "It's just business." No threats, no lectures, just information that had been unnecessary until 5 minutes earlier. No one spoke for a while after that. Eventually someone asked about the pie. Another person mentioned the weather turning colder next week. Conversations restarted, but they moved carefully now, like people stepping across unfamiliar ground. Daniel said very little for the rest of the meal. Later, while coats were being gathered and leftovers packed into containers, he approached me near the front door. His voice was lower than before. "I didn't know," he said. "I know." He hesitated, searching for something else to say, maybe an apology. Maybe a defense. In the end, he said neither. Monday, he repeated quietly. I nodded once. Monday. Outside, the air had turned cold. I stood on the porch for a moment before leaving, listening to the muffled voices inside the house. The evening hadn't been about revenge. If Daniel had never asked the question, none of it would have come up. The board meeting would have happened exactly the same way. But sometimes people force information into the open, and once it's out there, the room rearranges itself around it. Monday was still coming.